Da 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 da. What's my good cheer? Welcome, everybody. And everybody's not here yet. Let's give YouTube a couple of minutes to get those notifications out. In the meantime, if you've never popped into one of my lives, hi, I'm Cindy. I explore the inside and the outside. And today I was exploring a little bit with connecting with my sister Alice. We enjoy a few things similarly. We love thrifting. I actually work in a thrift store. I think it's super fun, and I'm able to live my life in a very, I don't know, eclectic way to my taste. I'm able to get out there and buy things that um, I desire, right? But at some point in my life, somehow it clicked into my head that I would never be able to realize these things. I'd never be able to afford them. And, it just wasn't going to be a part of my life. And yet, right, I have created this. I don't know. I think it's pretty beautiful, this little life that I had. It's certainly a whole lot more beautiful than it was a half a dozen years ago. But through my choices, I think I have made some improvements along the way, not just for myself, but I'm hoping for, those few people like my sisters that I do like to hang out with, that rubbing each other positively that way, that, that maybe these lessons can somehow be absorbed, right? We know that lots of times we can speak until we're blue in the face. We can imprint and express as much as we can, and it won't make a speck of difference at all. But sometimes in that receptiveness, right? We talk about that quite often, is that word willingness, right? And I think that because I was brought up in a dynamic family where both my parents were their own individuals and their own beings with their own set of rules and desires and goals for themselves, and yet they managed to coexist. They managed to raise a family, and even though we were raised dynamically, right, I was able to see the extremes on both ends, the good aspects and the probably the non-preferable aspects of different personalities. And I learned in that dynamic family how to kind of dance within those needs, because definitely on both parts there were different needs, but at the same time I got to pick, right? I got to pick by the examples that were in my life, the example of my father, the example of my mother. And even though I'd like to say, right, I want no part of that one part of the relationship is no part of me, we have to remember it takes two, right? Those 23 chromosomes or 24 chromosomes, right? They are split up evenly between the two. And that part we don't have any choice about. But that human part in that, right, that nurturing, that influence, that mentorships, that guidance that we receive, there are two parents. So if you don't like one aspect, one doesn't feel right for you, if it doesn't feel that like it's part of you, then, right, you may be magnetized to the other parent in that relationship, and you pick up those traits. So you have that physicality, the genetic part of it, but it's also in our environment, right? Genetically, I'm 50% my mother. And to be honest, I would prefer, right, not to have very much genetically in that. But I don't get a say. I don't get a say in that, in all honest truth. And none of us do. We don't get to pick our parents. We are born into them. And sometimes we just walk into it. We just wake up one day and we go, what the hell? Right? And then it's up to us in our choices. And hopefully, we made some good choices in that selection, that appetizer platter, because, having the extremes on both end, it gives you lots of varying experiences, a lot of different ideas, a lot of different ways of moving, thinking, feeling, right? And, as much of it would have been, right, kind of forced down my throat. And that's what I'm doing right now, in that, right, truly deciding for myself, what am I, right? Like, what parts of me are beneficial, because there are lots of beneficial parts of me that, were taught to me, were programmed to me, were influenced, and probably a little bit of manipulation, a lot of do as I say, not as I do, or because I said so, that I didn't get much choice, right? That idea of honor thy mother and thy father. That was a toughie for me growing up, because I had a very difficult time honoring my mother, because I didn't see my mother the way the rest of my sisters did. I believe, right? My father danced in that relationship, right, just as much as I did, because he was in the extreme. He was opposite, right? But sometimes opposites, those opposites attract, right? Those opposites do attract, right? And then epigenetically, right, we pass down through the nurturing, through the upbringing, through some of those traditions, the way your mother did it, your grandmother did it, your grandfather did it. And if you're lucky, right, there's some good influence there, right? And good parenting, right, doesn't always, right, happen in a way that I don't know, got taught to us, right? Because lots of times we rear our children, and I never had children myself, but I am a spectator in that, and I was reared myself, so I'm speaking through my own experience in that, right? We would like our children to do better by us, right? To do better by the parents that we had. If I had children, I would have everything that I thought that I didn't get, and I got everything I got. I just didn't get it consistently from both people at the same time. I had a different relationship with one parent than I did with another. I felt safer with one parent than I did another. I felt loved by one parent and not by the other. I felt like I was cared for, right? And watched over, maybe by neither, right? Because they were both living their experiences, two different people, two different extremes with different needs, right? And sometimes in that byproduct of living your life, and as much as you would like to do better by your children, sometimes we do fall short. I'm grateful that I look at it that way, because there was a time when, I just did not, right? That compassion was not there. And I would have done anything to make sure that if I had children, that, they would have been brought up differently. They would have known how much they were loved. They would have been cared for. They would have been respected within the community, right? all these things that I learned as I'm going from one school to the next, going from one change to a next, reinventing myself and chameleoning into something more acceptable to others. And these are the lessons that I get. And I would have taught this to my own children. Now, I believe I would be, right, top notch mom, right, now. But those years that, right, I'm not going to be having children now. But if I had children, I do believe, because narcissism does run in my family, right? A lot of control, a lot of empathics, again, those extremes, that as much as I would have, right, my intent was there to do better by my children. I think in that spoiling and making sure that I was stumbling over myself to make sure that my children didn't have to have the life that I did. And I'm not saying it was all bad, because there was lots of adventure. There was lots of fun. We were feral kids for the most part. But it was a dynamic family with dynamic life lessons within that made it difficult for each one of us kids. And there were four girls in that family. I have three other sisters, and each one of us struggle within those in those upbringings that we have. And some of us recognize the source of those problems, and right, some of us just bumble along and just struggle with them, right? Not recognizing that sometimes those answers are right in front of us. Okay, it's Monday, you guys. We are picking a word that we're going to munch on all week. We're going to look at it in different perspectives. If we get the word again, I guess we're going to go into the word for another week. It's because the lesson didn't get absorbed properly the first time. I understand these are lessons for myself, but I hope, in my reflection through the lessons that, once the topic is right surfaced in me, it will be suggested to me. That's why before I went live tonight, I went into my suggested videos and I put watch later on all the topics that I wanted, right? I wanted to be resuggested to me so that I have an opportunity to watch those, because I know I will be in contemplation. I will be in the lessons on whatever the word we pick this week. Today was a strange day. It was an amazing day. I went out with my sister. We did a little bit of thrifting, and yet in one moment, I know the exact moment even. And I don't know if anybody out there ever has these experiences when you're just going off and you're doing your own thing, and then all of a sudden, right? It's just like something just plugged into you at 240 volt or 250 volt and just turned that machine full blast and worked at full blast. And then just like 2 seconds, you're just like totally zapped. I ended up sitting in chairs as my sister was shopping because it was so instant and so immediate. I was just ready for, right? Ready to come home. I feel much better now. But it does happen, and I do take note of it because it is very strange, and the extreme again from the way I feel from one moment to the next moment. And I recognize it because it does happen once or twice a year. But I hope it was well needed, and whatever or whoever got that energy out of me, oh my goodness, right? I hope it's put to good use. But it's okay. We had spent the whole day, my day, right? I was ready to come home, and I did. And I came in and had some dinner and took in some lessons and enjoyed the rest of my day off, knowing that a lot of those small details of what I wanted to accomplish, right, for my days off were already completed so that I could jump in to some of those topics that might possibly move me forward a little bit, because I feel it, you guys. Right? We're supposed to be moving right now. We're supposed to be, right, having our sights on something and not being preoccupied by the crazy town that's around us. And some of us are stalling out at that. And when we stall out at that, what do? We pay attention to the crazy town around us, right? And what happens? We end up getting zapped. Okay, you guys. First impression. We're going to spend a few minutes, and it'll be the first perspective that comes to my mind. The first thought. We'll just kind of run with it for the moment. Hopefully, it serves me, and who knows, right? Maybe you'll be entertained by it in the moment. Maybe it'll be a lesson that maybe you might want to munch on to. Okay, you guys, here we go. Here's the word. Here's the word that we're going to yap about all week. Oh my goodness, we got a really good word, you guys. We got the word kindness. The first perspective on that. We talked a little bit about this last week about, those those one words that kind of represent who we are and how we want to move in life. Um, First time I was working with the word, it was the word forgiveness, right? Well, the first word was despite. That was the one I lived as a child and as a teenager, right? Despite what you think, right? Despite that you don't want me around, despite that you think I can't do it, right? That was how I moved, was that word despite. But it wasn't a very positive word, right? I discovered mindset. I discovered setting goals and moving forward, right? And I found that, it helped me not to be so distracted by the outside when I was able to focus on something, right? That crazy town just kind of turned into background noise a little bit. And I made some serious movement, and I really discovered how much I love to learn. What a great student I was. And in my entire life, I never thought that I was a good student. I was always told how dumb and stupid and how useless it was. And I believed it because I played right into it. And even in my last year of high school, as I tell you, I spent more time skipping class than I did in class, right? I wasn't a very good student, but right now I would have to say, right? I'm doing I'm doing pretty I'm doing pretty good. And I enjoy it too. It's just not a matter of, right, getting it done. I actually really enjoy learning. I enjoy making movement, and I find it to be so beneficial to my life in the way that it's the evidence that I can do it, right? That I am doing it. And however my life turns out, that's totally up to me and the decisions that I make, and my movement towards them. So, you know, first word I got was this word despite. And that was a toughie word. And I was a toughie girl to use that word, but it wasn't a very soft word, right? And mindset helps you to recognize the softness in you, but also the strength in you. And that's what I found absolutely amazing because again, right? Say those 23 or 24 chromosomes. I'm not a genius. I'm not a scientist that way, right? But split in evenly between the parents that way, it would make sense that I would be somewheres in the middle in that, right? So this word kindness ended up being the next word, the next one word for me, right? Forgiveness served me so well, right? It was the beginning of actually making some movement. I needed to be able to work with that word forgiveness to get some of that load off of me, some of that guilt, some of that shame, right? Off of me so that I was able to move a little bit better. When I moved a little bit better, I got some guidance and a little bit of help through somebody I met in a workshop, and he helped me to work through to my one word. So I had like a guiding light. That's what your one word is supposed to be. It's supposed to be like your guiding light, so that whatever you do in life, that's your guiding light. And not only is that your guiding light, it's what you need the most. This is the way I was taught to understand it, right? So he helped me to work through into my next word. And that next word that we determined that would be, right, my one word was kindness. Yeah, I was very surprised that that word was mine, but it kind of made sense because of that idea that it's what you need the most. And I thought that I needed kindness the most, right? But as you move in the lessons, and that's the idea, you move in and out of these topics, and right, just in time to understand that that wasn't an outfit. That wasn't supposed to be your favorite outfit. That wasn't the truth that you were supposed to live with for your entire life. That was just the truth of it in that moment. It was what I needed, right? That little bit of kindness to myself in my understanding. But sometimes kindness is tough lessons too. I have to say it because some of those lessons were tough, right? Some of these lessons that we're doing here and picking the 54 words is tough. But that's why we have to stay soft in that, right? Because we need to be able to hold on to that empathy, right? That kindness, that being able to put ourselves in other people's shoes and understand what they need. It's our nature, right? You could say, lots of people would say, well, that's a weakness. You should be toughening up and taking care of yourself, not worrying about other people. But again, in that programming, in that nurturing, right? Those were the lessons for us. And if we're drawn to that, and if it makes us feel good about ourselves, well, right, you can't strip that from us when it's part of our nature, even if it's right, it's detrimental in some aspects. In the long term of things, it happened, right? You can't take it back in the moment, but you can make it better, right? You can have better understandings. And when you have better understandings about it, kind of dissipates. It kind of, like I said, goes into that background noise, right? And when you're just focusing, right, on that, well, that background noise is just that, right? you're tunnel visioning in that. But we can make those changes along the way. And that's what happened to me with this word kindness, because in the beginning I was throwing, because it's in the lessons that I needed in the moment, right? So I was throwing that word kindness out there, and it served me well, in when I got the mentorship and I was back to work and I was back into the customer service, and it was like I was always good at customer service, but that genuine interest in it, right? It wasn't, right? Good afternoon, right? It was good afternoon, right? Like it was a totally different feeling that I was bringing into it anyway, and it helped to keep me soft, and it helped me to recognize that it worked, right? Kindness definitely worked, and it helped to buffer, and this is what we do, right? It helped to buffer because I was in some really tough lessons that required me to have a little bit of kindness to myself, and also to be able to see the evidence of using these ideas and these lessons in kindness in my everyday living, and to be able to see how it impacted on me and how it impacted on the people that I rubbed up against, right? Very important word, this word kindness. It served me so, so well in helping to lessen the weight of what I was doing. And it also, right, it made me feel like I mattered, right? It gave me a little bit of compassion for myself, recognizing, right, that, okay, Cindy, right, you don't have to be so tough. You don't have to be so hard. You don't have, right? And these are the lessons that I needed because, being, you know, the daughter of the two extremes, right? I had my mother's nature about me, right? Also, and I would have to say, I picked up that baton and I was pretty tough on myself. But being in the lessons, and right, I'm not stopping, and the lessons are tough. And I know that, right? How am I supposed to enjoy the ride? How we talked about this yesterday about the delight, right? How am I supposed to have fun and enjoy my life if everything that I'm doing is just muck, like just right trying to push through it? It's always a struggle, and right, I had enough of that growing up, and being a practitioner in mindset, right? Being a believer because I have seen the evidence in my own life that I have to move forward with the lessons. But I recognize that kindness wasn't sticking around in the content that I was bringing to the table because I was in all different subjects, but kindness, even though it was the background, it was now in the background, but it was kind of vibrating to me now. It was like it was in the background, but it was just there. So it didn't have to be the main topic. Well, where did I go from there? For you guys who have been with me for any length of time, I went straight to choices. You know that for me to be able to make some choices was the game changer, because again, like I said, to recognize that I mattered was a huge lesson, but to recognize that I could be my own mentor, that I could be my own, right, I could do that self parenting for myself. I can give myself that kindness, right? I could give myself that forgiveness. All these words that I worked with in those moments that, right, somehow went into the background, only because it had been absorbed into my system. Choices and change became the next set of words, and I worked with those, right? I worked with those. And I suspect, right, I still have not found in truth that one word that's going to, right? I don't know. Never give up. I don't plan on giving up. I don't think I've gone through, I think, the toughest part of what I'm doing in the moment. Well, maybe you never know from one moment to the next. But I suspect that the lessons that I picked up along the way is going to help to, right, make that journey a little bit more comfortable for me moving forward. Good evening, Nancy. I hope you're having an amazing day. Thank you for sending me the pictures. Your family is getting bigger and bigger all the time. Let me have a sip of my coffee. Nancy coming in is a good time to take a breath, take a breath and take a sip before we move on and tie this up for today, right? Because it is a first impression, and we're going to come back at this tomorrow in recognizing that this word kindness was a very, very important word. And I've had many, many lessons in kindnesses. And, I think some of those kindnesses that have been bestowed upon me that helped to make it possible for me to be sitting here in the moment. Hello, Dreek. Thank you so much for popping in again. Oh my goodness. Nice to see. Oh, it wasn't. Thank you, Nancy. Thank you, Nancy. Always sending me all those flowers and all those hearts. It's really, really sweet. But Nancy has been in the lessons with me, and she knows that, I worked with kindness for quite a while. I think I worked with the word kindness being my main word, that I directed all my content was all directed that way, right? But somehow, right? Again, it went into the background noise, and right, it didn't seem that it was surfacing like it was, right? And that just meant that the lessons had been absorbed, and somehow we moved into a new word. I suspect, right, I do have my one word, but there are so many lessons out there still to be had, things that, right, still need to be absorbed into my system, and they will require a different word along the way. But this week, we are working with the word kindness. And oh my goodness, Nancy, such a coincidence that this is a word that you could also be an expert presenter in its lessons, right? Because Nancy has kindnesses that she bestows on others, but she is also, right? You get what you give. She's also a recipient of kindnesses, and those kindnesses are sometimes our lifelines. And I know for myself, in those kindnesses that my sister Tracy, right, in her wanting to help me, not understanding that I had to help myself, that I needed to feel that I was earning the lessons and not just, right, being pushed into, right, that reward for being the good girl and doing what somebody had asked me or wanted me to do, that I was actually doing and wanting, right, to do things that I wanted to do. And it's still that way, and I'm running my life, and even though it might seem minuscule to some, it's fantastic to me because I'm my own person. I'm learning to be kind to myself, right? To treat myself like I matter, and to also understand that it's okay, right? To not be pushed into things that are, right, in the moment, even though they're not unkind, they feel like they're, oh my goodness, that's too scary, that's too painful, that is going to be such hard work, right? That we're holding on to the doors like somebody's pushing us from behind, like trying to get us going. Then, but that's sometimes all we need, right? Because it's only in the moment that we feel those things. But once we push through that and we have that experience, and right, it's just one step in front of the other. Just recognizing that sometimes that kindness is tough, right? Sometimes we just have to throw ourselves through that doorway into that unknown, right? And just flounder, right? Because sometimes that's all you can do because we don't know what we're stepping into. But as you flounder, you find things to grab onto. And if you're very, very lucky, what comes down to you is maybe somebody else who's willing to give you a hand, right? 100%. You're always kind, Nancy. The fact that you always pop into my lives whenever you get a notification or something, right? I think it's so sweet. And again, it's in that idea of being a little drummer boy and a little drummer girl because the people I'm working with right now are probably not those multimillionaires, billionaires in this moment. But is most definitely that potential is most definitely there. And it's in our choices because, right, we have been left behind in those lessons for far too long. And it's time that we did a little bit of catching up, right? And sometimes again in that scarier, when things are really just seem desperately just too hard to do, absolutely impossible to do, we can find ourselves giving up because that's the way, right? You're not good enough. You can't do that. Who said? Right? What? Are you kidding me? You can't do that. Right? And I've heard this all my life. And I beat myself up when I want to accomplish things or set goals and stuff. And, you know, I could beat myself up by saying these things to me. But these one words that we pick up along the way, and if you just hyper focus on where you need to go, and kindness, it just served me so well, and I think it served others well too. And what popped into my head right now in this word kindness, this is the lesson I learned I think about 2 weeks ago. I thought it was absolutely amazing. This word kindness. This kindness is not just for me to make me feel good, to make me feel like I have something to offer somebody, right? This word kindness isn't the person that I don't know, buying baby clothes for, or helping them out with a bill that they just don't have the money this week, but next week they'll have it, and right, you help them out with a few dollars. Sometimes it's, just doing these kindnesses, for a next door neighbor, right? We just don't do it for the recipient either, but it's for those who are around us that get to experience somebody doing a kindness for others. That's where the impact is. That's where the influence there is that's where the inspiration is the person who gets to witness that kindness. I thought it was absolutely, it just like, are you kidding me? Right? Because I think about my job at work, and I guess we could talk about that tomorrow because we got this work kindness all week. But I did that at work in practicing my craft and practicing in that moment of my one word, that word kindnesses. But I didn't ever take into consideration the show around me when I was expressing these kindnesses or helping out in these small kindnesses, that there were witnesses to that. There were thoughts and observations, and right, and I never even took any of that into consideration, and that was the most powerful, right, influence out of all of it, right? More influence in being the example than it was in that recognition that I had done something kind, or that recognition of the recipient in receiving that kindness, right? Right? And it was a great lesson for me. And that was only a couple of weeks ago, you guys. I'm 62 years old. I just got that lesson a couple of weeks ago. And already it's turning into content for my brand. Okay, you guys. We got this word kindness this week. I am Right, I am ready for bed. I got zapped pretty good. It was pretty instant and it right, but it's my day off and right, I am no worse for wear and I'm going to wake up tomorrow at full charge and I'll full charge into the lessons on kindnesses. I have delved into this topic of kindness lots, right? Lots. But we'll see tomorrow how we'll come at it again, right? It should be interesting this week. I'm glad that kindness made it to my 54 words. I'm only picking 54 words. This one is our 36th word because last week we had forgiveness for the second time. So I'm just going to mark here 36, number 36. We got kindness. That's pretty awesome, right? And you know that if it truly was my one word, it wouldn't have been number 36. 100%, but it doesn't make it any less an important word, right? I got to pick my first two words when I started these 54 powerful words, working on these 50. And I chose, right, choices and change because I think in this world that we live in right now, it's what we need the most, right? Right? My choices are coming. Change is coming, whether I want it or not, because it can't help, because I'm changing, right? And I'm making movement in those choices that I make. But I think, right, the world is changing on its own. And if we don't flow with those changes, right, if we push back on those changes, I don't know, right? Maybe those choices will be unrealized and yet, right? Exactly what we needed in the moment. So I'm keeping my eyes open. I'm tunnel visioning, right? In those goals and those desires and in, right, that movement that I want to make. But at the same time, I'm being observant too. That curiosity, you guys know, I love traveling down those side branches. I do. I know it takes a little bit longer to do that, but those lessons, and if I'm capable of absorbing those lessons without them causing me emotional, physical, mental issues, then, it would serve me and maybe serve others, right? To continue doing that a little bit, right? With me, the time is not a constraint, right? We're moving into retirement. Few more years to go, but I like talking about it now because it helps me to recognize, I don't have children, so I don't have grandchildren, I got those pink bangs. So it's my mentality is not set in my age, but I have to recognize, right? And I have to have indicators and signals to myself to say, hey, Cindy, right? You're not a spring chicken anymore, right? And you're far from it being over in any way, but also at the same time, you got to remember you're not jumping out of planes and you're not, right? You're not climbing Mount Everest, and you have to keep that in your mind because, right, this is where we can trip ourselves up is when we think we can do more than what we're actually capable of doing, right? We're capable of doing lots, but sometimes when you think you can, you only think you can. Okay. Be kind, folks. Treat others in a way you want to be treated, right? The golden rule. It was one of my dad's favorite sayings every day. He brought his kids up on quotes and inspirational sayings, and that was a biggie in our household for sure, right? Do unto others as you would have them do unto you. And the thing is, too, is, my dad was not a religious person in any way. My dad was a spiritual person. He was very much an analytical and intellect, but yeah, he had no problem dishing out the quotes, and he didn't care if Jesus said it, Buddha said it, right? Or his favorite, which was Pierre Trudeau. He really was a big fan of Pierre Trudeau, amongst others, right? David Suzuki, Jacques Cousteau, Carl Sagan. He lived in the future 100%. And this is in the 60s and 70s too. I talk to my customers because all my dad's stereo equipment always showing up in the secondhand store, always showing up in our store. And I'm thinking this stuff was worth a fortune. And I know that because my dad, he liked to invest in that tech. But that tech in the 70s, right, is a far cry from the techs, right? We're in the 2000s now. That's a long span of time that we have been able to make some movement, some innovation. And I think some of those lessons that we picked up in that time might serve us a little bit better as we move forward a little bit, right? But we have to remember that little bit of kindness. And I would have to say today, I gave myself a little bit of kindness, even though, right, I felt like a little bit of a root to my chair. But, right, you can only do what you can do. And I wasn't in a position to get myself out of this chair once I got home. Okay, you guys, we got kindness this week. We'll see each other tomorrow. I'll come in probably in the afternoon sometime. I don't think I'm going to be leaving the house. Is that maybe to go for a short walk or something? I think it'll be, for the most part, I'll be taking in lessons, right, on kindness again, right? And it's not because we got this word kindness for a second time yet. It's only because I've worked with this word kindness quite a bit. And obviously, right, I've missed something out in that. So I'm going to see if there's a different perspective, a different experience, a different story I can tell myself, right, that I might feel, I don't know, more resonance with. And that, right, if I share it, maybe somebody else there might find resonance with it too. Okay, you guys, I'm bagged. We'll see you tomorrow. Have a great night.